Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Rahsaan Bernard. I am the president of Building Bridges Across the River, the Ward 8 nonprofit that runs the THEARC, the 11th Street Bridge Park, and the Skyland Workforce Center. This morning, it is an honor for me to welcome all of you who have convened here today at the THEARC, in Washington, D.C., as well as everyone who's connected all over the world by live stream for this important, and I must emphasize, very timely, town hall meeting entitled Silence the Violence. Before I move on, I want to recognize a couple of our board members here this morning. We have Rona Friedman and Ann Ashmore Hudson. Thank you guys for being here. Today we are fortunate to be able to hear from a distinguished panel of expert physicians, researchers, educators, and community leaders on how an innovative, scientifically proven meditation technique called transcendental meditation can effectively address the epidemic of trauma and toxic stress that is gripping the district and every other city, both large and small, here in America and around the world. The event is presented by the Meditation Center here at the THEARC and the Center for Health and Wellness of the David Lynch Foundation. For us at the THEARC, hosting this town hall is a perfect alignment with our mission. We call and consider the THEARC a humanitarian mall, a multi-sector approach where health, wellness, recreation, arts all converge. And this humanitarian mall has benefited from the presence of the David Lynch Foundation. We are also proud today to say that the THEARC is the largest social service, multi-sector, nonprofit collaboration in the country. At this time, I want to introduce my dear friend, the President and CEO of the David Lynch Foundation, Mr. Bob Roth.
Thank you very much, Rahsaan. The THEARC is in fantastic hands with your leadership. How many of you here have tried some form of meditation? Wow. 10 years ago, if I'd asked that question, what do you think? Not so much. Now, how many of you are here at this event thinking, meditation? Anybody? Like, that's a strange, out of your comfort zone? Some people. Also understandable. What we're doing here today, and I should say that I've been practicing transcendental meditation for now 50 years. I started meditating when I was 50, no, I didn't. I started as an 18-year-old as a college student, suffering a lot and under the same sorts of pressures that many young people have today. And I found this meditation to be incredibly effective for reducing stress, making me ready to learn and better able to navigate the pressures and stresses of daily life as a student. And I should say, standing here, as I've also been teaching this for 46 years, that when you think of what a meditation teacher might be like, and this is true of every other teacher of transcendental meditation, we're not like the traditional, I'm not into woo-woo, I'm not into New Age. I love science. I love facts. I love rational thought. I love the brain, health. And so what we're doing here this morning in these few minutes is we're going to do something very interesting. We're going to look at the problem of violence. We're going to look at the crisis of adverse childhood experiences, ACE. We're going to look at the effect of stress and tension in the lives of our children and in our own lives. And we're going to ask the question, is there an antidote? Are we going to medicate all of our children? Is there such a thing as talk therapy for all of us? How do we address what is genuinely a public health crisis? And I should say that we stand here in full support and appreciation of the hard work of everyone to address the problem of violence, not just here in DC, but all over the world. And what we want to do is we are here to offer a tool, an antidote, a tool in the toolbox that anyone can adopt and use. It's called transcendental meditation. And we're going to look as if we would look at any medication, new medicine. We're going to look at it with a skeptical, critical eye. We're going to say, can this really work? Is this really something that could be of benefit to everyone or anyone who's interested? So as Rahsaan said, we're very fortunate to have a panel of some incredible experts, many of whom have traveled across the country just to be here with all of us. But before I do that, I want to introduce my co-moderator. And he is an extraordinary human being. I consider him not only the finest dresser I've ever seen, but a mentor. And I'm going to read you words about Maurice Owens from President Obama. From 2014, when President Obama inaugurated his foundation, My Brother's Keeper, which is an initiative to improve the expected educational and life outcomes for boys and young men of color. President Obama said, "The world is tough out there, and there's a lot of competition for jobs and college positions, and everybody has to work hard. But I know you guys can succeed. We've got young men who are starting to make those good choices because somebody stepped in and gave them a sense of how they might go about it. And I know it can work because of men like Maurice Owens, who's here today." I want to tell Mo's story just real quick. When Mo was 4 years old, he moved with his mom, Chevette, from South Carolina to the Bronx. And his mom didn't have a lot of money, and they lived in a tough neighborhood. Crime was high. A lot of young men ended up in jail or worse. But his mom knew the importance of education, so she got Mo into the best elementary school that she could find, and every morning she put him on a bus, and every night she welcomed him when he came home. She took the initiative. She eventually found a sponsorship program that allowed Mo to attend a good high school. And while many of his friends got into trouble, some of it pretty serious, Mo just kept getting on the bus and kept working hard and reaching for something better. And he had some adults in his life who were willing to give him advice and help him along the way. And he ended up going to college, and he ended up serving his country in the Air Force. And today, Mo works in the White House, just 2 doors down from the Oval Office, as the special assistant to my chief of staff. Today, Mo Owens heads up the Washington, D.C. office of the Libra Group, one of the largest shipping hotel corporations in the world. Please join me in a big welcome for Mo Owens. I have a question for you. Why are you here? I taught Mo to meditate basically, 3 years ago? 2 years ago. So what is it about, why would you be taking time out? Why do you feel that transcendental meditation would be an effective adjunct or tool for this issue, this crisis of violence that we have in the country?
Well, first of all, thank you for that introduction, kind words, and definitely words that I hold dear to my heart from President Obama when he launched My Brother's Keeper. And for me, that day alone would be one of the keepsakes for my life and my mom, because it was truly a tribute to her and her upbringing of me and making choices for me that I didn't necessarily have the wherewithal to do myself. Transcendental meditation. My CEO, George Logothetis, Libra Group, was like, "Mo, you need to sit down with Bob, learn how to do transcendental meditation. It's going to change your life." Those are his exact words. With that being said, for me, I'm a Bronx kid. I grew up in the Bronx, and as we know, inner city communities, not all young black males come from inner city communities, but I did. In the Bronx, I had a lot of friends who were heavily into violence, meaning they lost their lives due to crime and gun violence and things of that nature. I went on into joining the Air Force, where I got deployed into Iraq as well. I left Iraq. I was living in Japan, went back to Japan, and then I was sent off to the White House in 2007 under Bush. Then in 2008, I was placed into the Situation Room. So then I was in the Situation Room in the White House, dealing with all of these stressors. And now I work for a multinational conglomerate, and we're in all these industries of operation, shipping, real estate, aviation, hospitality. And then we have 150 interns a year as well. So we have kids come from all across the world.
My body feels lighter.
No, that's not a sign.
Yeah. So yes, with TM, I would definitely say that
Your body will feel lighter.
your body will feel lighter. So getting that roundabout answer, what I'm saying is that transcendental meditation gives me time to pause, because I grew up with a lot of hot-tempered people, right? I was also one of those hot-tempered people. So when you have time to pause and also to reflect, also to have original thoughts, that's what transcendental meditation does to me. It gives me time to have original thought, and then I can tell that my body's different too with transcendental. It's less tension knots. Just the medicinal purpose alone are reasons why I practice TM, and it's been so beneficial to me personally that I know that now that my brain has opportunity to have original thought, some of the things I would do irrationally are now rational. And that's what I attribute to TM, because I noticed the difference within the 2 years I've been doing it, because I would still have these hot-tempered moments because I was working in a situation. I was doing all this other stuff, and I never had this as a tool in my tool belt, and now that I do, I just have much more clarity, focus. It gives me organization. And I love the original thought because I work in an industry where I need to have ideas. We need more ideas, Mo. We need more ideas. I hear that a lot. And it's because they know people from where I'm from have all of these adversities to overcome, and when you overcome them, you have ideas. So, transcendental.
I should just say, and then we're going to continue. Thank you very much. A few quick words of definition. The word meditation is very abstract. Some people say, oh, I could never do this. My mind wanders a lot. Other people say it's a religion or it's a philosophy. Let's just, some words here, definition of terms. When we're talking about transcendental meditation, TM, straight out, not a religion, practiced by people of all religions, not a philosophy. You don't have to believe in nothing. I'm a very skeptical person. You can be 100%. This is like exercise, effortless exercise for the mind, for the brain. Not a change in lifestyle. If you don't like tofu, fine. It's just a tool. We're told we exercise to be healthy from the neck down. Diet, exercise, the neck down. But what about this 3-pound unit here? What do we do with this? And TM, we just look at it. It's a simple, effortless technique that anyone can do, and it's practiced by 10 million people of all religions, all philosophies. Something you do a few minutes in the morning, a few minutes in the afternoon. We're going to be talking about that later. But right now, the purpose of this is really not to convince you of anything. Purpose of this is education. Purpose of this is information. We make decisions based on what we know. Not many people know about the amazing work that's being done with this technique. And I just have to say, here at the THEARC, we have a team of amazing staff of the Meditation Center, and you're going to meet 2 of the top teachers in the United States, TM teachers, in a little while, who are running the show here. So we're going to step over here. If you could pull the screen down, and we're going to show you a video that was just made about some of the people who learned to meditate through the THEARC.
My body feels lighter. I just feel, I don't know, free.
We're in a community in Southeast DC. I grew up here.
In this community, there is a lot of toxic stress.
The children and everyone in that area, most people are angry because things don't happen the way they want them to happen. And as a result of that anger, there's a lot of lashing out.
One day I was on my way to work and I was driving down the street, and on the side of the road there were people holding up signs saying, "Stop the violence in our community." And I thought to myself, we have an answer.
All right, so everybody, let's just sit back comfortably and easily. And first, let's close our eyes.
I feel that TM in this community at the THEARC is very important for the times in which we are living. I listen to people, and when they come to learn about TM, they're all saying the same thing. I want to get rid of stress. I want to be able to clear my mind. I want to feel better.
Self-care is survival. It's something that will really have an impact. And so making time for self-care and, putting the oxygen mask on first, to use the airplane metaphor, that it has an impact, and certainly TM and meditation is like number one.
It provides me with a baseline of bliss, a baseline of happiness.
I meditate because it makes me a better person, I think, a more patient person.
I felt this sense of peace that I can't let go of.
I marvel at, how much more I'm getting enjoyment out of things that I'm doing now.
I've noticed that it's taking me to another level of calmness.
I see myself modeling for students that, the response doesn't always have to be anger, or it doesn't always have to be violence. If you calm yourself, you can literally control your actions.
The quality of life is much better for me because I do things with purpose.
I find myself really trying to think things out instead of reacting on them.
I am not always reacting. I'm planning and just have a calmer approach.
I'm not normally a tired person, but it just kind of amazed me that you could sit down for 20 minutes and be this energized person.
I'm sleeping better, and I can feel it. I can feel that I'm more rested.
It makes me want to exercise more and just take better care of myself overall. I meditate because it makes me happy. I had someone yesterday tell me that she loved my energy, and I said, then you have to go to TMC, because that's where I got my great energy from, meditating.
In the last 40 years, there have been over 400 scientific research studies published on the effects of transcendental meditation in all areas of life. In your booklet, in your envelope, there's something about the TM Center, and the last 4, 5, 6 pages are just scientific references. Research that's been, and don't worry, Dr. Staggers, I'm not going to take this away from you. Research that's been published in top journals funded by the National Institutes of Health, by the Department of Defense. The man who flew from Oakland, California, out here just for this and is turning around and flying right back is Dr. Frank Staggers, who's the medical director at the Berkeley, California Addiction Treatment Services Center. He's a practitioner of addiction medicine, adult medicine, and public health research, and he's the former president of the Alameda Contra Costa Medical Association. He's also a deeply good human being and a dear friend. Please welcome Dr. Frank Staggers.
Thank you so much. It's always an honor to talk about transcendental meditation. My practice, as was already alluded to, is what I call a where the rubber meets the road type of practice. I deal with addicts. Many of them also have psychiatric disorders, about 75%. A lot of them have been abused. Many are homeless. It's a very tough inner city practice. And for me, when I look at solutions, I look at basically 2 things it has to be. It has to be practical, and it has to work. It has to be practical and it has to work. Because when you are dealing with very severe problems, it's got to work. It's got to work. So when I was asked to come out here and talk about stopping the violence, which is very prevalent in many parts of our country, I jumped at the chance, said absolutely. Now it's interesting because violence is very complex. There are many aspects to violence. There's environmental aspects, developmental aspects, economic aspects, many aspects to violence. And any solution is going to have to be comprehensive. In Alameda County, there's a Dr. Tony Eiten that's looking at environment and how it impacts health. And what we're finding out, interestingly enough, is you can predict how long a person will live by just their zip code. Just your zip code. Give me your zip code, especially if it's in a violent area, and we can tell you how long you're going to live. So any solution to violence is obviously going to have to address the environment. But in addition to that, it has to be comprehensive. So regardless of the fact of whether you address the environment, and we're trying to address that, you also have to address the individual. It has to be comprehensive, has to look at many aspects. And what transcendental meditation does, in essence, is it strengthens the individual, plain and simple. And it's interesting because it's not just me saying this. We've got 400 published research, and there's probably 600 research that hasn't been published because the people that looked at those research results said, oh, this can't be true. Probably over 600 research studies. So why does TM work? Why is it powerful? Why does it work when you use it in Army veterans? Why does it work in prisons? Why does it work in the inner city? Why does it work in drug rehab programs? Why does it work? Well, very simply, as was alluded to, transcendental meditation is very powerful for your mind. It's very powerful. Now, it's interesting. I've always enjoyed electroencephalogram studies. That's where we put the little electrodes on your head, and then we measure your brain waves. And when you're stressed, your brain waves become very chaotic. I like to say it looks like a band. So you have these brain waves, and imagine a band where everybody's bumping into each other. Everybody's going in different directions. Well, that's kind of what a stressed out brainwave looks like, an incoherent band. But when you do TM, and this is verified in many studies, the brainwaves become very coherent. It's almost like the band gets its act together and starts marching in unison. And this is reflected in how people think. You saw this beautiful documentary right here where the persons were saying things like, I think better, I don't get agitated as easily, I'm calmer. There's also an increase in people feeling hopeful, and we know that hopefulness is extremely powerful emotion. All these things of just this positive energy and this just positive feeling comes about basically because people are more coherent. They're more coherent in their thinking. And that's what you see right off the bat with people that do meditations, more clarity. You also see a reduction in anxiety, a reduction in a desire to use substances. We know that, for example, addiction is very common in people who are stressed out. Stress out a person, they start reaching for the drugs. Well, transcendental meditation helps calm the person down. It's like a natural tranquilizer. So it's a very powerful tool, and it's a tool that if you are serious about decreasing violence, you can't overlook it. You can't say you're serious about reducing violence and overlook something that is this potent to human physiology. And we'll go in some of the research, again, showing anxiety goes down, depression goes down, clarity of thinking goes up, creativity goes up, self-esteem goes up. And we know that self-esteem is tightly correlated with how well you take care of yourself. If you don't value yourself, you're not going to take care of yourself. Simple as that. Now, it's interesting because I like to say that transcendental meditation is road tested. And it's road tested on rocky roads. We run to the, we meaning those of us who do transcendental meditation, we run to places that are difficult. A lot of folks who have good ideas, if you say, well, you want to test it? You want to test it in the inner city? You want to test it in the prison? Well, not really. But transcendental meditation, we run to the challenge. So I like to say transcendental meditation is road tested on rocky roads. We road tested on places that are difficult. So I want to talk about some of my personal experience. I was a medical advisor to research that was done years ago on meditation in prisons, especially San Quentin. Now, if you want to know if a technique that reduces stress is effective, just go to a prison. Just staying alive in certain prisons is very difficult. If you're talking about stress, it is magnified many times fold in prison. And when we went into San Quentin with a tremendous team led by Stuart Moody at the time, people were skeptical. Meditation's not going to work in prison. Well, what do you think we found out? Prisoners that meditated, less violence, more self-esteem, less disciplinary reports. And in addition to that, People that meditated when they left prison didn't go back to prison. The recidivism rate, that's the return to prison, went down with people that meditated regularly. And this really shocked a lot of our politicians because they felt nothing could be done. You know, you always have those people that says nothing can be done. Nothing can be done about prisoners. Nothing can be done about violence. And those of us who study TM said, well, it's not quite true. It's not quite true. There are things that can be done. If you look at TM in challenging schools, I was fortunate enough to be an advisor to some of the David Lynch funded programs in the San Francisco School District. And we took some of the most difficult schools, schools where you couldn't even go to auditoriums because stuff was so violent. And what did we see? Reductions in violence. The kids meditated, even though the feeling was initially from the community, this is not going to work, our community is too tough. Oh, it worked. Beautiful, beautiful results in the San Francisco School District, in the toughest schools, in schools where they have to keep the auditorium locked up because they're worried about gang violence. Violence went down, grades went up, and other schools are now looking at that. We're also beginning to look in San Francisco at using transcendental meditation in post-traumatic stress disorder patients. Now, in my practice, I see a lot of PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder patients. And one thing that helps is getting them to do meditation. Because with post-traumatic stress disorder, anything can trigger it. And you never know as a physician what the trigger points of a particular individual are. And getting that person to have a technique that brings down their agitation level, that calms them down, is extremely important. Now, the beauty of transcendental meditation is it's like working out in a gym. When you leave the gym, your results carry over. And with transcendental meditation, when you do the meditation, it carries over into your regular day. It carries over into your regular day. So, have I used up my 10 minutes yet? I think I have. But anyway, the long and short of it is this. If we are serious about impacting violence, we need to implement transcendental meditation. Thank you very much.
We're now going to welcome a panel of doctors who will have a chance, you'll have a chance to hear more about some of the different areas of research. And for that, I'd like to ask Mo to introduce our panelists.
All right. So Dr. Yolanda Lewis Ragland is a double board certified physician employed by the Children's National Medical Center for over 10 years as a community pediatrician, child and adolescent obesity specialist, and assistant professor of pediatrics. Lewis Ragland is also originally from the Kenilworth community in Ward 7 and has resided in the southeast sector of the nation's capital for almost 20 years. And we also have Dr. Hassan Tetteh, is a thoracic and cardiac surgeon with Howard University Hospital and MedStar Washington Hospital Center, and serves as Chief Medical Informatics Officer for the United States Navy. Tetteh was honored as a hero of medicine and listed as one of the most influential Black doctors by Savoy magazine in 2017. Please welcome Dr. Tetteh.
People often ask me, well, as Dr. Staggers was saying, there's so much interest now in meditation. I remember when I first started this, you didn't even want to say the word meditation necessarily in polite company. But now times have changed, and they say, why is there so much interest? Why is it being offered in hospitals and businesses? And the David Lynch Foundation, for example, is a nonprofit, and a division is the Meditation Center here. 1 million kids now, we've provided scholarships for 1 million kids to learn to meditate in the US and around the world. And we have a global perspective. We're in 35 countries. We have a desire to teach this to 1 million Syrian refugees. Could you imagine? Change the world. The reason why there's so much interest, I think, in meditation is 3 reasons. The problem of stress is very real. The problem of adverse childhood experience is very real. The problem of trauma on the brain, very real. It doesn't just go away. There's a wonderful book called The Body Keeps the Score. You can have an experience as a young person and forget about it, a traumatic experience, but your body never forgets. That trauma, that twist, that stress is there. And so this problem of stress is worse now than ever. 2, there is no magic pill from the pharmaceutical industry. Oh, just take a pill and you won't get stressed, or take this pill and your problems will be healed. No, we mask it and manage it with alcohol and too much of this and that. And the third reason is research, particularly on meditation, particularly on transcendental meditation. So we're going to take a few minutes here and hear from our panelists and hear their thoughts. And also, I think, Hassan Tetteh, you flew all night, correct? A red eye. So we really drew people here. So
So I'm going to open up with the questions. I have a question for Dr. Tetteh. Can you talk more about how TM benefits the heart? What are some of the research findings?
Sure. Well, it may be prudent to start with a bit of background in just a moment or two, and that is how I came to appreciate meditation. Because if you were to poll, I would argue, cardiologists and cardiac surgeons in particular, they probably won't have much regard for meditation. So it has to be stated that the way that I came to appreciate and learn about meditation actually was a result of a trauma, if you will, being deployed to Afghanistan in support of the 2nd Marines Expeditionary Forces in Helmand Province, and as a combat trauma surgeon in that capacity, witnessing on a daily basis significant trauma to young men and women, and in particular the Marines. And it was very challenging to cope as a team. And I knew about meditation, heard about meditation, and even read about meditation. But it was in my escape to the tent, in between the trauma and the blown up bodies that our team was taking care of, that I found solace in a book that became a quick favorite, and that was the Meditations of Marcus Aurelius. And for those of you that may have heard of Marcus Aurelius, and probably more contemporary may know that the movie Gladiator was featuring Marcus Aurelius. So if you want to get a little bit of context, it was the great emperor there. And what I realized is that this man retreated to the tent to meditate, and he wrote about it, and that's what I was reading. And so when I got back home, I immediately, and even before leaving the desert, began to study the technique of meditation a bit more, and then embraced it when I got back home and found a great instructor in Mario Orsatti who taught me how to meditate. That was several years ago, and I meditated ever since. From a medical standpoint, and I tell this to my colleagues, I tell this to my patients if they ask, I don't necessarily foist meditation on anyone, but I tell them that they embrace meditation. There are significant benefits, well beyond just heart health. But because your question focused on heart health, I'll just simply say this. There are studies, very convincingly, that demonstrate without any question that meditation reduces high blood pressure. High blood pressure, as you know, is a very prevalent disease and one of the major risk factors for developing heart disease and contributing to death, not only in the African American community, but throughout all populations. And when you meditate, the beauty of it is not only do you lower your blood pressure, but there are no side effects. Right? And I've been challenged about that, and they're like, well, there's got to be a side effect. Not really. You could be too relaxed, but I would argue in today's world that may not be a bad side effect to have. And so, even in my own experience, I know that if I meditate and I take my blood pressure, it'll go down. I can regulate mine. And when you practice TM, you will have an enduring and lasting effect on your heart health. because not only do you lower your blood pressure, but it makes you happy. That works. Indeed.
Briefly, you're also doing something at National. Tell a little bit about National Defense University. And
Sure. So I had the opportunity, I've been in the Navy for many years now, and I had the great opportunity to go to the National Defense University in my last duty station, and I served as the command surgeon at the National Defense University. And then the following year, I was a student. And what we did was with our health and fitness team, I introduced TM to our director at the time. And again, he was a bit of a skeptic. And with Bob and the help of David Lynch Foundation, I convinced him to just take an instructional course, just learn about it. And when he did, he became a quick convert and an adopter. He even got his wife to also learn TM. And then we developed an initiative to bring it to the campus. And at the National Defense University, for those of you that may not know, it's right here, just not too far on Fort McNair. It is a senior service war college. It is the alma mater at the National War College of General Colin Powell. So it is a very significant institution, and one that develops and trains leaders, future leaders in the military and the interagency and the government. And so when we introduced TM, we didn't know how it was going to go. We had a sort of an informational session, and we could not, you probably remember this, Bob, we could not accommodate all the people that came. And you know, when you think about the roots of meditation, it really is a warrior technique. It puts you in a zone. And you need to be in a zone when you're going into combat. But yes, we developed that initiative. It's going strong, and we trained many future leaders in their own right. So it was a excellent program.
the Defense Department provided $2.4 million for a study on the effects of transcendental meditation for reducing the symptoms of post-traumatic stress, which you may know 21 veterans commit suicide, take their own lives every day in the country. And so much of it is a hopelessness. And the research that was conducted, it was called a phase 2 trial, which is going to be published in a top journal in the next few weeks, showed that transcendental meditation was as good, if not better, than the gold standard, far more expensive, far more difficult to implement program called prolonged exposure. So it's really having a powerful effect.
I have a question now for
Thank you, Dr. Tetteh.
Yeah, thank you. Sure. Definitely. Thank you for those answers. For Dr. Ragland, what does stress do to a child's brain, to his or her health? Do you think it is important for children and teens to learn to meditate, to learn ways to reduce stress?
Absolutely. So the first question, and I guess a little background would help as well. Yeah. Again, from Washington, D.C. They flew me all the way from right here off Mississippi Avenue, 21st Street. And so, thank you for bringing me all the way here. So one of the things about me as a pediatrician, mom of 3, and all teens, so please pray for me. They, what I found with meditation, and I was introduced, because here, David Lynch was here, and I thought, wow, let me learn a little bit about this technique, because ACEs is one of those, hot topics that we're really sort of focusing on, and really recognizing that the neuroendocrine system in a child, as early as in the womb, is affected quite severely. And so here we are now, when we talk about ACEs, a lot of times we want to start with the child, but it is with the parent who's pregnant with the child. And so in this toxic environment, all of the stress of dealing with whether it's poverty, whether it's violence, whether it's just you know, the anxiety and the depression that many of us are facing, that the neurology of this child is being affected by all of the stress hormones that's racing through the mother's system, and it severely affects the ability for the child's brain to form in a normal capacity. And so as a pediatrician, when you're in any community, but very much so in communities where there's lack, where there's violence, where there's poverty, what a lot of times happens is we get all these diagnoses of lots of illnesses, ADHD, ODD, which is oppositional defiance disorder, anxiety, depression, and you wonder, how is it that a 2 or 3-year-old or 4-year-old is depressed? What do they have anxiety about? What did you have anxiety about at 2, at 3? And so it became really a concern for me to find out what was it that this technique is, and how would I see this as something that could possibly affect children in a positive way? Because as Dr. Tetteh, is it, said, one of the issues with treating a diagnosis with medications is there's always a side effect. And so these medications, a lot of parents are hesitant to give anything that's going to have a side effect. As a parent, I was hesitant. I have a 17-year-old who has ADHD. And so, you know, that's always been a struggle, never medicated. You know, did a lot of things in practical ways, things that we had to teach him, things that he still has to learn. And so for me, learning about meditation and beginning to practice it, that's something I introduced to my 17-year-old, who's doing quite well. He's a junior in high school now, and he's doing quite well. But again, so one of the things that I wanted to know is, what is it, one, and how is it practiced, and what may be some of the effects. And so what we find with young kids, and there are all kinds of studies, again, that prove this, but many schools have even replaced things like detention with meditation, and they have profound effects on their ability to focus, their ability to learn better. You talked about having new and novel ideas, really being able. So these are kids who are in these environments that are extremely stressful. They're gonna go home to, and what I love about TM as I learned it is you can't control your environment on the outside of you. And as a child, you're always going to feel that way. You can't control what's going on at home with mom and with dad and with school and your neighborhood. But you learn to control the environment on the inside of you. And your ability to react to that environment is a profound empowerment that we're giving to these kids. When you're empowered to know, I don't have to react the way that I see everyone around me react. I don't have to have the same outcome. I don't have to have, anger is a choice. It doesn't seem like it at the time. It seems like when someone does something to you, look, it just made me angry. But in TM, I learned personally, and so I'm a huge proponent of teaching others that these are all choices that we make. You know, and so these are kids who, and so some of it I'm not sure answered all of your question, but
brain and health. So what does stress do to a child's brain?
So the brain, I was saying, doesn't develop normally. Again, the neuroendocrine axis there, and again, so anxiety early in life, again, depression. These are the kids who have high diagnoses of ADHD, oppositional disorder, or defiance disorder. And so a lot of mental illness that will come from, or diagnoses of mental illness that will come from just plain stress. And again, stress comes from so many factors that we can't control. And so learning how to teach it not only to kids, but again to parents, because they're the environment around the children, I think is extremely important.
We're actually about to launch a study with the Children's National Healthcare System, which has an office here at the ARC, and it's going to be on teen mothers as part of this cross-generational. What I'd like to do is take one last question to Dr. Staggers, and then we're going to transition to all the points you've been talking about with children. Well, how do we get this to children? How do we make this available? And that's going to be the topic of our next panel discussion. But before we pivot there, Dr. Staggers, this whole issue of addiction, in brief, it's I've heard as high as 190 people, again, die every day in America because of substance use overdose. And what is it that something like transcendental meditation adds to the, I mean, everybody's working hard to try and prevent and treat addiction, and that's all useful. But what is the missing thing that you find that TM offers, to the regimen?
Well, again, in substance abuse, we are really starting to look at stress as a major precipitator of substance abuse in general. So, for example, we know that when you stress out a person, whether it's in war or whether it's just seeing violence in your neighborhood, that people are more prone to display addictive behaviors. And so what transcendental meditation does, in brief, is it acts like a natural tranquilizer, but without the side effects. So the person doesn't feel that need to, I've got to reach for alcohol, or I've got to reach for pills, or I've got to reach for this, or I've got to reach for that. They meditate, and it brings about just this tranquil feeling. Plus, the person makes better decisions. There's a clarity of thinking. It's interesting because if you look at the physiology of stress, stress over time eats away at the prefrontal cortex where you make your major decisions. So you're not only craving, but you're not thinking. And so meditation basically reestablishes blood flow and the necessary repair enzymes to the prefrontal cortex. The person makes better decisions, and they don't have as much craving, long and the short of it.
Thank you very much. Big round of applause for these three wonderful. Thank you very much. I want to make, as we transition now to our next panel, a few points. All meditations are not alike, just like all medications are not alike. This is not a judgment call. This is just looking at outcomes. And I think one of the most interesting things and most important things that's been coming out in the research over the past years is just like vitamin A is not the same as vitamin C, there's different outcomes. In transcendental meditation, it's an incredibly simple tool. I like to use the analogy of an ocean. So you're on a little boat and you're in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean and you get these giant waves and you look up 30, 40 foot high waves. You can think, oh my gosh, the whole ocean is in upheaval. But that's a bit of an exaggeration because if you do a cross-section of the ocean, you realize that there's 30-foot waves, but the ocean in reality is over a mile deep. And while the surface of the ocean may be turbulent by its nature, the depth of the ocean by its nature is silent. Now this is just an analogy, but it's an analogy to we say this, the analogous, the surface of the mind is that gotta mind, the thinking, lots of thoughts, like the surface ocean. And it's a natural, I call it the gotta mind. Tell me, I gotta do this, and I gotta do that, and I gotta call him, and I gotta call her. Gotta make a list, gotta find a list, gotta make a new list, gotta slow down, gotta get going, gotta find the list again, wake up in the middle of the night. The gotta mind doesn't stop, even though we gotta get back to, anybody have that? So we all have a desire for some inner calm, some inner clarity, some inner focus, some inner energy, some inner strength. And the operative word there is inner. And so we hypothesize that deep within every human being, I don't care where you live, what your philosophy, religion, right now there's a level of the mind that is already calm and settled and wide awake. And we've lost access to it. And transcendental meditation gives effortless access to that. And how do we know that happens? Because of a constellation of changes that take place in the way the brain functions, the cardiovascular system functions, the respiratory system functions, the digestive system functions, the limbic system. whole huge constellation of changes. No time for that now, but what we'd like to do is show you a video to talk about that now. There'll be subsequent meetings that you can attend, find out more. But this is a video of the work that's being done in schools around the country, called Quiet Time. It's also been called Consciousness-Based Education. It is an adjunct to the curriculum. And you're going to see a video of who's going to be joining us, Dr. George Rutherford, who is cited in the video as being the principal of Ideal Academy Public Charter School. He has recently retired after 53 years as a public school educator. 54 years. And I like to say about Doc Rutherford, other than Willie Mays and Bobby Kennedy, Doc Rutherford is my hero. So we'll show this video.
This year, one of my students was killed 20 minutes after leaving my class.
They're dealing with a difficult home situation because of drugs, because of alcohol, because of abuse, because of broken families.
Stress is what creates problems in students, making them fight out.
If we're not able to find solutions, these children may be lost.
All right, class, we're ready. Quiet time starts now.
This helped to reduce the violence in schools because kids begin to think.
It helps you clear your mind.
Before I was meditating, I would get in a lot of fights.
The meditation calmed me down.
TM makes me happier. And in the morning, after when I meditate, I feel good. I release all the stress that I have at night.
A moment of pause is significant for these kids.
I used to always get angry, but now since I started doing TM, it's like, just brush it off.
Your grades will get better, your attitude will get better, your life will get better.
If you look at the brain science on learning, everybody knows kids can't learn if they're not emotionally ready to learn.
When our girls come in and they are just a wreck, and then they do quiet time, it's like it just smooths that out. And they walk out of the room feeling normal, feeling centered, and that's huge.
It's a great way of releasing all the stress out.
When I meditate, I feel like everything's gonna be okay and that there's always a solution.
When I'm done meditating and I open my eyes, that peace still stays with me.
When they come out of the meditation, they're more ready to learn because they now have this tool to be more aware of their own emotions and more settled, more centered, less reactive.
People's grades are going up, their behavior's changing, and there's just a better atmosphere around the school because everybody seems a little bit happier.
What starts to happen is students start to discover within themselves endless potential.
I was getting grades 60s, 70s, and then I got into this meditation, and like my grades went up to like to 80s and 90s.
It is urgent that we start now with the Transcendental Meditation in all of our schools and our community.
This work is about breaking destructive cycles of behavior. It's about being given the tools to truly reach one's full potential.
Meditation allows children to have hope and that they can be one of the answers to making this a better world for everyone.
John Wolfe is the Associate Director of the Crime and Education Labs at the University of Chicago. At the University of Chicago, he studied the impact of Becoming a Man program, which targets at-risk male students in Chicago public schools. Mr. Wolfe has been heading up, I think, one of the most significant studies ever done on the impact of, has been heading up the most significant study ever done, randomized controlled trial on the effects of transcendental meditation on young people. Would you please welcome John Wolfe?
Good morning. Thanks for having me here. Ever since I started working with the David Lynch Foundation, I've been hearing about the ARC and the work that happens here. And so I've been asking the last couple of years, like, when can we get out and actually do something at the ARC to see what's going on? So I want to thank you for having us here, not just the panel in general, but myself. I'm really excited to be here and learn about what's happening here. Oh, good, the slide is working. I heard that there might be a little hiccups with the slide, so I want to apologize on the front end that this might be a little choppier than usual. Instead of a clicker, I'll have to signal for the slides to change, so I apologize on the front end. But as Bob mentioned, I'm John Wolf. I work at the University of Chicago Urban Education Lab, and we do not provide any direct services, but we partner with Chicago Public Schools, the City of Chicago, to think through what are the most innovative, thought-provoking, and promising solutions for addressing the issues that we all care about. Next slide, please. So what I'm going to talk to you about this morning is an issue that is not new to anyone, and it is not unique to Chicago. It's not unique to New York. It's not unique to Washington, D.C., or really any other major urban setting across the country. Next slide. But two of the most pressing challenges facing every large urban district across the country are the issues of improving schooling outcomes for our young people and reducing crime, particularly violent crime. And because of the causal relationship, and I want to actually stress the causal relationship between educational attainment and future involvement in the criminal justice system, you can essentially think of these two issues as the same sides of the coin. I'm sorry that if you can't hear me, I'm going to take this out. Maybe this will be easier. Next slide. And next again, that was the corny slide flipping. What I want you to look at here and really process the numbers that you see on this graph is something that, again, is not unique to any particular area. It's also not new information, but I think this really provides some gravity to the challenges that are facing us. This graph shows you the gun homicide rates for males ages 15 to 24. First, the top bar is looking at an index of 17 other high-income countries. So think about Canada, Germany, Great Britain. And then below are the gun homicide rates in the United States for males aged 15 to 24. First, you see the number for white males aged 15 to 24. We scroll to the next slide. Latino males. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. So this is something that we all know affects our young people, but it doesn't affect young people the same. Next slide. We know that these issues of youth violence are concentrated in the most economically and racially segregated communities across our cities. These two maps show the city of Chicago, and on the left side you see the poverty rates mapped by community area, and on the right side you see the poverty rates mapped by those same community areas. Where the darker the color is, the higher the rate. And what you can see is that the same neighborhoods that are struggling with poverty are also inflicted by violent crime. And now, this is a depiction that I think gets across that point, but what does that really mean for a young person growing up in these communities? In a survey looking at young people in Chicago, when you look at high school students, 1 in 4 had someone murdered within 2 blocks of their home. And 92% of high school students in Chicago had someone murdered within 1 mile of their home. And these are the kind of the most extreme violent acts, but when you talk to elementary school students, 3 out of 4 in the Chicagoland area have witnessed a robbery, a stabbing, or a shooting. So 3 out of 4 elementary school students. Sadly, this isn't an issue that is unique to Chicago. Next slide. These same patterns hold in New York City. Next slide. And here in Washington, D.C., we've seen the same patterns emerge. Now, if you were to lay on top of these graphs, so we're looking here at poverty and violent crime, if you were to lay the high school graduation numbers across these maps, you would see almost the exact same pattern. Next slide. So what can we do about that? We've learned from recent research that, and Dr. Radlin mentioned it earlier, that simply growing up in a neighborhood where these violent acts occur have a profound impact on the development of young children. It's not even that you need to know the person. It doesn't have to be a friend or doesn't have to be a family member, but simply growing up in a neighborhood where these violent crimes are occurring impacts young people's ability to learn. In the psychology research, we talk about this in terms of cognitive bandwidth, which is the idea that you need full kind of mental capacity to have your brain online to make smart, informed, educated decisions. And by constantly being bombarded with stressful situations, your cognitive bandwidth is reduced because you have to take care of those high urgency, stressful situations. There's some research coming out of the sociologist at NYU, Pat Sharkey, who's an affiliate of the Crime Lab, who found that in the most violent neighborhoods in cities like Chicago, some children spend about 1 week out of every month functioning at a lower level as they try to navigate the home or school environment. He went on to describe that this is, the result of this is asking young people to sit and learn how to read, learn how to work with fractions, learn how to solve linear equations, while in the back of your mind you're dealing with much more salient, pressing, traumatic issues. Next slide. That doesn't just come from researchers, but also from the students that we work with every day. So there's one student in Chicago, when we were conducting focus groups about their experience, said this: you know, there's no quiet where we live. There's nothing but noise and drama. And he went on to describe that it was actually an extremely rare occurrence for him to ever in his life at any point during the day have a moment of complete silence, because there was something happening all around him where his mind had to constantly be attuned to navigating dangerous, stressful circumstances. Next slide. Now, we all know what stress looks like. This idea isn't new to anyone. You can feel this way if you're sitting in traffic late to a meeting, you're dealing with 10 different things, or you're standing in front of a room full of people with lights shining on you and cameras shining on you, and your hands kind of get a little sweaty, your heart pounds a little bit, you tense up. This is a normal reaction, and it's actually very adaptive. It helps us navigate very intense situations when we need to. Now, the issue is, if you're forced to respond to stressful situations over and over and over and over again, and you do it constantly, your mind gets stuck in that fight or flight response. And this constant firing of the stress response system is when we see our brains be overloaded. So this is just a hypothesis, but this is what we're hypothesizing in the work we're doing at the University of Chicago. The idea is that when a young people is exposed to stressful situations, it decreases what we're calling cognitive bandwidth, and thus impairs your learning, impairs your ability to perform in the classroom, and then impairs your ability to make smart, educated decisions, whether that is with your classmates, whether that's walking home from school, whether that's at home with your brothers or sisters. Next slide. What we hypothesize is that giving young people the tool of transcendental meditation could be an effective way to interrupt this response system. That TM could act as a reset button, so while there are still stressful situations that you have to navigate, can you give young people tools to reset and interrupt that constant stress cycle, so you're able to show up to school ready to learn, and you're able to make smarter decisions, whether it's in the classroom, on the playground, at home. Next slide. So that's an interesting hypothesis, but it's just a hypothesis. So how do we learn if there's actually the effect on young people's development that we would hope? Back in 2015, we held what we called a design competition, where I mentioned at the beginning, we don't provide any direct programming, but what we do is look for program providers, whether it's teachers, whether it's nonprofit leaders, community organizations, who have the most innovative ideas for addressing the issues that we want to solve. And so we held a request for proposal back in 2015, and we asked nationally for people's best ideas for addressing youth violence. We got about 230 applicants, and Quiet Time was one of 3 finalists chosen to test out the idea of injecting meditation into our public schools to reduce youth violence and increase educational outcomes. So here you can see the work that we've been doing over the past 3 years in 6 neighborhood high schools on the south side of the city of Chicago. As you can see, if you can see the map, there's a little checkered area around the schools. This is, it shows the catchment area of where students who are attending these high schools are coming from. So this is all of their home addresses, kind of where they're going to school. And you can see that the kids in the schools we're working with are coming from exactly the neighborhoods where we think kids need the most support and where we think they could benefit the most. Next slide. So what in the heck does this actually look like in a school? This is an actual bell schedule of one of our participating high schools, which shows you how quiet time is built into the day. Quiet time is offered at the beginning of the day and the end of the day in many kind of what you would typically think of as a homeroom period or an advisory period. The idea is as kids come into school in the morning, to get them learning ready, there's a short 15-minute meditation period on the front end. And then at the very end of the day, after you've been in class all day, your mind's been working hard all day, you meditate again to get you ready to go out, whether it's sports, whether it's homework, whether it's work, taking care of your siblings, get you ready to engage at the end of the day. Next slide. And I think you actually saw this in the video, but what we're starting to see some early evidence is young people describing the effect that TM has on them. And that young man said in the video, and I think this is so emblematic of what we're seeing across the board, is that I used to always get angry, but now, since I'm doing TM, I just brush it off. And what I think is important to think about with this quote is that while we haven't changed his environment, while we haven't changed the experiences that he may have, which is important, but that's kind of a longer term outcome, how can we give kids tools to navigate the environment right now? Next slide. And next slide again. So right now, unfortunately, I can't tell you about any of the results we're seeing. They're still preliminary. I would like to share some of the initial signs that we're seeing, but hopefully that should be out in the next couple months. But why we're so excited about this form of evaluation is we've set up our study of quiet time the same way that we look at cancer treatments, new medical procedures. We've built out the evaluation as a randomized control trial in the 6 high schools where we're working, in which half of the students with the 2 quiet time periods you saw in the day, half of the students in our sample are offered the chance to meditate. The other half of the students are working in some other teacher-directed prep period. So that could be silent reading, that could be homework. And so what we're able to say at the end of this study is, what is the real difference of offering a young person meditation versus what a school would already normally be offering young people? So this isn't just to say, well, some kids raised their hand and they wanted to meditate and we see better outcomes with them, but they self-selected into the study, and so maybe the results are real, but maybe it's because those kids were going to have better outcomes anyway. In this way, we're actually able to say at the end of the day, because the kids on average are all the same, if we see impacts for the group that's offered the chance to meditate, we can attribute those impacts to the meditation program. Next slide. So hopefully I can be back, whether it's in 3 months or 6 months or a year, whenever you'll have me back, and I can tell you about what we're seeing in terms of the impacts. But until that happens, because of the promising preliminary evidence, we've actually expanded the program to 6 schools in New York, or we're in the process of expanding to 6 schools in New York. And so hopefully when I have the chance to come back, I'll be able to tell you about not only the impacts we're seeing in the Chicago area, but in New York and possibly here in DC as well. So thank you.
Can you at least say, are you excited about the results?
We're excited, and that's the extent that I can offer.
Well, John is excited so much that we're now raising $7 million to replicate it in either New York, or I would like to do it in Washington, D.C. This is I want to make this point one more time. This is an intervention. This is no more fantastical than you say, if a child or a young person can't lift up a heavy box, then you teach that child some exercises to strengthen the muscles to lift up that box. There's all these connections in the brain that are not being connected to get potential connections for creativity, for impulse control, for decision-making, for judgment, for planning. They're there. And just look at this. If you don't like the word meditation, call it Technique X. Doesn't make any difference. It's just a way that anyone can access the quiet level of the mind and see in a very marked way these kinds of changes that take place not after many, many months, but within a few weeks, days, weeks. So come over here, Mo. We now move into our panel of educators.
Yes, so we had a brief introduction of Dr. Rutherford. I'll do it again. So Dr. Rutherford has been a public school principal and educator for 54 years. Dr. Rutherford, who recently retired as principal of the Ideal Academy Public Charter School, is also National Director of the U.S. Committee for Stress-Free Schools. So welcome him to the panel, which you've already done. We also have Rena Boone. She's a 40-year educator, Executive Director of the Meditation Center here at the THEARC, and Regional Director of the David Lynch Foundation.
It was Doc Rutherford who actually coined the term quiet time, which is now used all over the world, back in 1993, when he offered it at Fletcher Johnson Learning Center here in the district. And so Doc, in a way, is the parent of these million kids who have learned to meditate all over the world through gifts and support from the David Lynch Foundation. So Doc, it's an honor to have you here.
So we have some questions, and I like the education panel, specifically because as we alluded to earlier, I had detention every day when I was in high school. I was in a Catholic high school, and I always had my shirt tail out, and literally for an entire year I had detention. And one day I just snapped. I think I had a date or something, and I just snapped. So I commend you educators for being patient with young people. And also now there's a solution with transcendental meditation. So first question for Dr. Rutherford. You have been meditating for over 25 years. How has TM helped you personally? And can you talk about why entire families should meditate?
First of all, I doubt if I've been able to last 54 years if I didn't have TM. TM is most important to me and also to my students at Fletcher Johnson and IDEA. In fact, I have a student here that graduated from Fletcher Johnson who was taught TM back in the 90s. Will you please stand? I want everyone to see you. And I understand we got the principal and a few of our students from Ideal, Dr. Harris, our principal at the Ideal Academy Public Charter School.
They're going to be coming up on stage.
But yes, TM have helped me, and it has helped those students that we have had at the Ideal Academy Public Charter School and Fletcher Johnson. I don't think any school can be as effective as we want it to be if, in fact, we do not put the transcendental meditation in the program. Transcendental meditation should be in all of our schools because you see all the violence here in D.C., Chicago, New York, and everywhere you go, there's a lot of violence. This is stress. We have to get the TM program in all of the schools, not one or two, but all schools, and you will see a better educational system.
Questions for you, Raina. You have been teaching children to meditate for over 40 years. Can you tell a few stories of lives that have been transformed, even changed from this meditation?
Thank you. Thank you for asking. Take two. Thank you very much for asking that question. When I look back on my life and the decisions that I have made, one, to become an educator, a teacher, And number two, to become a teacher of Transcendental Meditation. Those two together have created a very fulfilling life. Yes, I have many stories to tell. I'd like to tell you the story of one student at Ideal Academy that really touches my heart. A young girl one day came to school with her mother to enroll. Unfortunately, she was so traumatized because she had been bullied the previous year in a school that she was afraid to even walk into the school. The mother came and told me, and then I said, would she be willing to come and hear about meditation? So Dr. Rutherford and I encouraged her to walk into the quiet time room, which she did, and she sat down. I could tell that she was visibly upset. She was beginning to wheeze, going into asthma, and she was so uncomfortable. And then I began to talk to her all about transcendental meditation and the benefits and how it could help her to be calmer and to be more focused and to just to be happier inside of herself, no matter what had happened in the past. So she said yes, she would be willing to learn. I not only taught her, but I taught her mom as well, who was also having health issues. Now, when school first began, she was not able to come to school for a whole day. All she could do was come for an hour and then 2 hours. And eventually she became more comfortable. By the end of the school year, this young girl was coming all day long, happily in her classes with the other students, learning, meditating with the group. Her mom said that at home they discovered a talent that they didn't even know she had. She had a beautiful singing voice. She started singing and brought so much joy, not only to herself, but her whole family. This is the transformation that I see over and over again. I call it a silent transformation. It's like the ripple effect. I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, and we were discussing the ripple effect. You know that experience of maybe being a child where you toss a pebble into the pond for the first time, and then the waves go out, affecting the whole pond? When you put a stressed pebble, a toxic stressed pebble, into the pond, that goes out into the whole environment. Contrast that with putting a pebble of peace and calm and harmony into the pond, and that ripple going out. And that's what I see happening when children learn transcendental meditation. That ripple of peace going out into the school and going out into their families. Another story, there was a young man who said, I asked the children, why would you like to learn how to meditate? And he said to me, I want my brain to work better. Another student said, I want to get rid of my anger. And then they learn, and then I asked them a few days later, how do you feel? Relieved. I can focus now. I'm not as angry. My mother wanted to know, what has happened to my child? You're doing your chores, you're more polite, you're not arguing, all because of meditating, practicing TM. In a school setting, we practice for 15 minutes, going within, releasing the stress, becoming happier. I see this over and over again, and we have our students here today. In a few minutes, they will come up, and a few of them will share with you what TM has meant for them.
I have a question for you. This is really good. What if a skeptic says, well, this sounds religious, or is this just another religion? Is this, how do you answer that? If a person says, well, I'm a practicing Christian. I'm very faithful to my religion, or I'm a Muslim. How do you respond to that?
I respond by saying, first of all, that transcendental meditation is not a religion. I have no religion to enroll you into, no philosophy, no belief about anything. It's just a practice to help you to become the best person that you can possibly be. This has nothing to do with religion, but if you are a religious person, because you are the person practicing the religion, you may find that you have a deeper spiritual experience within yourself. But it has nothing to do with any particular form of religion.
Dr. Butler, do you have anything to add to that as well? Do you have anything to add to that?
No. We have
Mike,
not
Doc.
had-
Mike.
Oh, we have not had many problems with parents concerning religion because Arena has had conferences with the parents. In fact, we have a parent group that was practicing transcendental meditation, and some ministers was also practicing transcendental meditation.
I just wanted to say you were mentioning one of our grandparents actually is a minister, and she's on one of our videos that we made. And her greatest joy is to talk to people about the fact this has nothing to do with my religion, but it has all to do with me becoming a better person within myself.
I have a question for you, John. If this, I mean, why is University of Chicago Crime and Education Labs embarking on this? I mean, this was 3 years ago, quite cutting edge. And what do you, why are you doing this?
So when we first started, I think I asked myself the same question. So the labs had no background in any form of meditation, but after we went through the design competition where we solicited ideas from around the country, and the Quiet Time program was awarded one of the 3 finalist slots. However, the first year actually was a pilot study. We thought, this seems really promising. There were some really interesting early results coming out of San Francisco. And we knew the program had been up and running in New York. And we thought, okay, this sounds promising, but that's San Francisco. Like, does this translate to Chicago? Does this translate to public schools in New York? And so
Very offensive to people from San Francisco.
and so we wanted to see, okay, if this is going to be something that we're going to fully invest in, we need to hear from students and from teachers and from principals first. And so we partnered with 2 schools in the first pilot year, where the program is offered not as part of as an official evaluation, but just offered to about 100 kids in each school. And we wanted to get their feedback first. We read the proposal and we knew what we thought, but like, okay, let's hear from kids and hear from teachers. And after that first year, we were just blown away by the impact that I think first and foremost the kids talked about, but one quote will always stick with me from the principal who said, you know, I had been looking for something for years. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know that it was meditation, but all I knew is I'm trying all sorts of interventions to provide my young people so that they can be as successful as they can be and as they should be, and nothing really seemed to stick. But with this meditation program, I'm seeing that all of a sudden the mood, the climate, the culture in the building is changing. And all the other interventions that I'm offering are now seeming to have more of an impact. And that, I think, is where we see Quiet Time coming into play. Not that it should replace anything else that a school is doing. This isn't to replace tutoring or isn't to replace after-school programs or other social emotional supports. But we think of this as a foundational piece that by layering on the Quiet Time program as a foundational building block in the school, every other initiative that the school is then able to roll out is more effective because kids can take full advantage of all the great things that schools are offering.
And I have one last question, and anyone can take it. Just thinking, sometimes when I speak on myself and I look at the years I grew up, and I'll put myself in that kid's shoes, and my question is for anyone on the panel. You have a young kid, teenage kid, girl or boy. They don't even want to put their coat on because it's not cool to do that when it's cold. Like you're walking out thinking you're big and bad. How do you convince that kid to have buy-in to sit down and learn TM and practice it every day?
I love that question because this is one of my favorite things to do. When students come into the room and they learn about TM for the first time, I tell them, by the time you leave this room, I want you to know what transcendental meditation has to do with you and your life. So how do I do that? First of all, I ask them what matters to them. What is important to you? What would you love to do and experience in your life? And then after that, I congratulate them. That is great. I get them dreaming, and I encourage them to dream. And then I say to them, well, how would you have to be in order to achieve what you just said? What kind of person would you have to be? What kind of mind would you have to have? And then they think for a moment, and then they start coming up with ideas. Well, I'd have to be focused. I'd have to be committed. If someone says I want to own my own company, well, I'd have to be a nice person because I may have people working for me. And so it just goes on like that. And then I say to them, now these things that you just said, are you always that way? Are you always focused? Are you always kind? Are you always committed? Well, no. What gets in the way of that? And then we work it around to the word stress. Stress that stops us from being our best self. And then I say, well, what if you had a way that you could be more of these qualities all the time? Would that help you to achieve your goals, your dreams? Yes. Well, this is what transcendental meditation has to offer you. Would you be willing to learn this simple, easy, effortless technique that can help you to be your best self? And they say yes.
They better, because that's Rena.
I'd like to just add that definitely not everyone signed up right away. When we approached high school kids, we got a lot of funny looks. People, because we didn't force anyone to learn. They were offered the chance to learn. And so there was a lot of like, I don't know what you're talking about. We got a lot of like, am I going to start floating? Like, I'm not going to sit here and hum and float around. And so kids walked out of the room. But then a couple weeks later, they come back in the room and say, like, you know, my friend was doing that thing that you were talking about, and I noticed he hasn't been getting into it with whoever. And like, is it still okay if I learn how to do whatever you guys were talking about? And so we see a gradual shift. It's definitely not at once. There are the early adopters who kind of pave the way, and then it's a lot of people recognizing and seeing changes in their friends that then make them want to adopt and have that shift as well.
Let's hear from the kids. Want to introduce?
Yes, so now we would like to ask the ideal students going to come up to the stage. Let's welcome them. So we want to welcome you. We are so happy that you are here today. I know you may be nervous, but I'm so proud of you because what you have to say will make a difference. So we have, we have Imani Robinson, Ranicia Simmons, Imani Watson, Janae Carter, Renaya Patterson, Naima Moore, Jasmine McCain, Kayvon Johnson, raise your hand so we can see where we are in the line, Kayvon Johnson, Tyleek Marshall, Tyleek Marshall, and we have Curtis Brown. Give me a hand. So we're going to start with Imani Robinson, and she would like to share with you what she thinks about transcendental meditation.
I meditate because I'm not as mad throughout the day, and it helps me stay focused in my day that I'm having. I'm also not as tired as I was when I wake up and when I go to school. Meditation has helped me and my brother. We argue less. We don't fight over things that's not important to us. I'm not as, mad. I say calm words. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Bernicia Simmons. My thoughts and feelings about meditation. Since I started meditating, it's been really calming me down. I've been mad about things, but when I practice at home, I wasn't so angry. This is why I love meditating.
My name is Imani Watson. I meditate because it helps with stress. Since I started meditation, it gets all the bad vibes out and the good vibes in. Meditation helps me in school because I stay focused in my class. Also, I get good grades. It helps me to take control of my anger and trust people more. I love to meditate because it is very calming. It is a very calming thing.
I meditate because it keeps me calm. Meditation relieves stress and anger. It also helps you do your work and it keeps you out of trouble, and that's why I meditate. I'm Renaya Patterson, and I meditate because it helped me stay calm. Meditation also helped me by releasing stress when I'm mad. So when I meditate, it calms me down, and I love meditating. I meditate because me and my brother always get mad at each other, but it helped me more or less because if I do not meditate, I would be always mad at people, and that's why I started meditating.
Good morning. My name is Jasmine McCain. Since I started meditating, my mind has been more open and full of wonderful thoughts. I say that because TM has helps me to be more calmer throughout the day as far as my actions and my behavior. Meditation helps me in school by being able to focus in class and to learn some new things every day.
My name is Kayvon Johnson, and I love to meditate because it helps me focus more in class and do my work without getting distracted.
My name is Talik Marshall. The reason why I meditate is because it helped me be more calm and more focused, in tune to my work. That's the reason why I meditate.
My name is Curtis Brown. I love to meditate because it helps me to keep calm. I meditate at home so I won't get in any trouble. Since I've been meditating at school, my mom and my dad have been getting good reports. I always meditate at school before going on field trips. I meditate at school before going on field trips because I want to make my school look good. This is why I love to meditate.
Big applause.
We have a short poem that was written by Jasmine McCain that she will share with you.
A spirit of calm. A spirit of calm, peace, strength, patience, and purpose that follows me throughout the day. A spirit of calm that is released from within, a completion of me. Jasmine McCain.
Thank you very much, all of you, for sharing. That was a very brave thing you just did. Thank you.
We're very, very fortunate, blessed to have here with us Councilmember Trayon White, Senior, Ward 8, to give some comments, some remarks. Great man. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. This is a very bright light. But I'm excited to be here this morning, partly because we deal with a lot of trauma, and violence in our community. And to see these phenomenal young people express themselves, give them another round of applause. And briefly, I was at an event yesterday with Life Pieces and Masterpieces, who primarily focus on mentoring African-American boys, and to see some of the trauma they've been going through as young men, and to hear about some of the things they've been through. We were at a fundraiser, and some people came to the audience saying, "Where's my son? Where's my son?" It kind of threw me off. I didn't know it was a skit at first. And I started to hear about all the sons that's been lost to gun violence and even young ladies to gun violence in our community all across the District of Columbia. And so I think the meditation is one of the key tools we're using in our toolbox to ensure that young people are able to be calm, express themselves, learn, and just to get the type of therapy they need outside of medicine. You know, I think a lot of times in our community, we like to medicate our children and, say that they have issues, but sometimes internal things happen. I think that what we've seen displayed for our young people today is an example of what is possible. And so we support this movement. We support what's happening in our community. I'm happy to have it at the ARC, because a lot of young people come through here. And I think I'm going to get back to meditating myself because I'm under a lot of stress right now. But thank you all for joining us. God bless.
So I'd like to ask Rena and Jeru Hall and Doc to come back up on the stage. Oh, and and Mo, come back up on the stage. So we need 5 more chairs, 5 chairs. We're just going to wrap up now. And it is my particular honor to introduce a very dear, dear, dear friend and a very powerful teacher of Transcendental Meditation, an exponent of things that are good for young people and everyone, and that is Mr. Jeru Hall at the end, who is the he's a senior program director here at the Meditation Center at the ARC. And first I'd like to go to Doc and just some final comments. Doc, as we wrap up, you've been, as I said this before, an advocate that this should be community-wide, that this should be grandparents to grandchildren. What you've seen, what you've experienced, talk about why.
Well, over the years, we have done the Transcendental Meditation in the schools. We need to now bring the parents in. We're bringing youngsters in, training them. Then they go home, and the parents are not aware of what they are doing. So we develop parents groups that we train at the ideal, and those parents now have the opportunity to meditate with their children in the afternoon. And most of everything they said was so great. I think Rena have a tape on it, and I would ask Rena to share it with you all, any parent that wants it, she can send it to you. But it is important, not only for the children, but for our parents also. You don't have to be a parent. Anyone in the community is going to help. So I ask you to please look at what took place today, listen to what everyone said, and then come back to the art to see these folks right here and get trained in Transcendental Meditation. I meditated this morning before I came in, and I will meditate when I go home. I meditate twice a day. It is important when you get my age, you meditate, and everything will be great.
Thank you. So I'll just ask Jay Rula, just any general comments you'd like to give to the audience and your community.
There's always one. First of all, I'd like to thank all of you for coming out today. And it is pretty bright up here. I just feel that all of us deserve to be the best that we can be. A wise man once told me, life is an inside job. And also to water the root, to enjoy the fruit. You enjoy the bark, the leaves, the flowers. Everything gets better when you water the root. And the beauty of a technique like TM is that it allows you to naturally do that, to water your own root, and so you start to blossom from the inside out, to be the best that you can be, to be magnificent, to be fantastic, to be marvelous. And the only requirement for TM is that you're at least 10 years of age. Actually, there's another technique that can start at about 5, but as an adult, 10 years of age for young children, and that you're able to think a thought. And I think most people on planet Earth can think a thought. So it's simple, it's easy, but the results are so profound. And you deserve it. You deserve to be happy. In fact, I was telling someone, they were talking about the medications and their values to everything, but the side effects, the side effects of this is going to happen to you, that's going to happen to you. But in TM, the side effect is happiness. The side effect is you feel better. So you get all these benefits, plus you are happy, you're joyous, and it's all you. The other thing that I tell people is TM doesn't give you anything. You already have it inside of you. But TM allows for you to naturally and easily be the best that you can be, to be yourself, to be happy, joyous, creative, dynamic, successful, and you deserve it.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, we're going to ask the same of you. So any final comments or thoughts?
It's been so rewarding, such a joyful experience teaching here at the ARC. When I first came in February, when our doors opened after we had the ribbon cutting ceremony, Reagan and I, Reagan is one of our assistants, program assistants, and we thought, who's going to come? Where are they? And then slowly people started coming, and then more and more and more, and now people are coming in every day. We're having classes, 10, 12 people a week are learning.
That's going to go way up.
Yes, yes. And to watch people come in one way and leave out another. One thing that we noticed right away, as J. Rue was talking about, people become happier. The second day after they learn, they walk through the doors smiling. They can't contain it. Like, who is this? Who am I? How did it happen so quickly? That is what happens when you practice a simple technique twice a day. So much more evolves. So much more of who you are is experienced. And so we have so much fun in our classes. We laugh, we meditate, we laugh, we give knowledge, we receive knowledge, and it's just one of the most glorious experiences that I could have ever imagined that I would be having. So I thank all of you who are coming, and I thank all of you who will be coming.
I have a comment. Maurice came down from New York, so I have a comment. Do you have any final thoughts or observations, comment?
I would first of all thank you for having me express how TM has changed my life, and also thank you for being my teacher. Nonetheless, I would also say as a young black male, I understand that there's a lot of adversities that are unnecessary that we go through, and I say we collectively. And just having that pause has been so great of an asset to who I am, and being able to be in rooms where normally it's just myself and a few others that do not look like me, and those are stressful situations as well. So I would say through the latter of my life, I would say to have TM as a tool in that toolkit is priceless. It's priceless because the journey doesn't stop after you graduate high school, after you graduate college. Maybe you want to go travel the world, see things. I would say that as a young person to access that type of asset and power, and it empowers you to be more who you are, because you do have reservations. You have reservations about societal norms, about who you are, the money you have access to, the money you don't have. Those things pile up, and if you do have time to have pause and have rational thoughts because of transcendental meditation, there's no other thing that you can have that's more powerful in that respect, because your brain, and I learned this listening to a podcast, there's over 1 billion synapses every hour or every minute or whatever it is. And your brain, nervous system, if you were to pull out the nerves, it would stretch up to the moon. So we have so many things. We have a galaxy in our brain that needs to be tapped into, and transcendental meditation gives you that access to that power. So I would say use it. And if you learn it young, I mean, we have people, I'm not that young, but I would say, like, if you would have that at your reach now, as a young person, you should take advantage of it, because you're going to be a better person than I am now, because 40 years later for you is going to be different because of how many original thoughts, encounters you won't have because you have that pause. You might live, you're going to live longer. That's what it's going to do. I mean, and happier people live longer. And I would end with this, that the givers are happier than the takers. So share what you learn with other young people and be a mentor in that space. And then you won't have to have these panels. You'll have kids telling kids to do this. So thank you.
I can say that this always dates me, but in 46 years of teaching this meditation and having sat on many panels, I can honestly say, and it brings tears to my eyes, that this is the single most inspiring experience that I've ever had with all of you in the audience and the panels that we've had, panelists speaking. And the need is so great, the suffering is so much, and you could hear all this, and there's I am my father's son, and he was a skeptic and a rationalist, and you could say, well, this just sounds too fantastical. But remember what everybody's saying, we're hardwired for it. We've just lost it. There's nothing come from the outside. It's nothing you have to believe in. It's just we're hardwired, and suddenly this ancient meditation practice, which predates Judaism and Buddhism and Catholicism, all the isms, predates all the isms. It's universal. Of accessing a field of silence that exists within us anyway, whether we believe in it or not. Why believe in it until you experience it for yourself and see, and then look at the data? It's there, and what a transformation that can have. And it's so interesting to me that the most modern of impossible problems, the rise of trauma and toxic stress, could be addressed by something as ancient and universal as just accessing a quiet field of silence that exists deep within everyone. That's the hypothesis. And the research and the experiences you've seen today, quite telling. So grateful that everybody came, and want to extend an offer. If you're here and you think, oh, this could work in my organization, or I would love to partner with government or the council member, wherever, we're innocent, we're teachers. We know what we do. And if you can see that this could be brought to your community and through your channels, then Rena's available 24/7. Jeru has 5 minutes off. I want to thank, now just take a moment, because we're here because of some extraordinary people, and I want to say some thank yous, and hold the thanks until I'm done. We have Erin Grossman, who is the vice chair of the David Lynch Foundation, is just an extraordinary human being, and she's here, and I could do this with everybody, but I will never get out of here. And there's lunch, by the way, afterwards, so we ordered a lot, so eat a lot. Major General Stephen Rippey, the wonderful Rona Friedman, who's a board member of the ARC, Dr. Ann Ashmore Hudson, Pam Sauber, Heather Florence, who's also a member of the ARC, community leaders, Councilman Trayon White, Senior, your passion and your love and your conviction for the community is deeply moving to me and to all of us. And I think with your leadership, much good will happen to this district. Really great. Bassett Keon, forgive me, Juan Thompson, Mae Best, Dr. Deborah Gilbert White, Frenchie Johnson, Brenda Jones, Blair Montague, Perry Moon, Heather Stowe, Rena Boone, and Jeru Hall, and Dr. Adora Lee and Reagan Ford, who is the two other members of the TM Center here, the Meditation Center. Our events team, Adam Pressman and DLF TV, Jess Bergeron, Wesley Lyons, Casey Williams, And one person who deserves special acknowledgement, tears me up, and that's Freda Plesser, who has, if you'd stand up. She's our executive vice president, and she has really helped turn this foundation from a mom and pop operation 14 years ago that was just, we want to help people, to now 1 million kids, and working with veterans and working with women who are survivors of domestic violence and people living with HIV, AIDS, and Rikers Prison and San Quentin Prison and everywhere. And this needs to, just to conclude, I remember standing up once and saying, well, the David Lynch Foundation and the Meditation Center is for working with at-risk populations, under-resourced at-risk populations. And this cardiologist stood up and said, good luck, you got the whole world. So on your way out, as I said, there's lunch, but there's also one of our wonderful supporters of the David Lynch Foundation, the Meditation Center, is Alex and Ani, and you all get a gift from Alex and Ani. And about 8 months ago or something, I wrote a book about transcendental meditation, which somehow became a New York Times bestseller twice, and you all get a copy. And I signed it. Now the thing is, it retails for $24, but signed, it's $16. So I can't thank you enough. It's absolutely, what a wonderful event. Thank you to all, Dr. Ragland, Dr. Staggers, all the speakers, and what a great hope for the future, and Congressperson White. So thank you very much.